14 tariff letters have dropped on 14 countries. So, why has this happened? Well, to begin with, we had previously heard that there were going to be 12 letters sent to 12 different countries and more following up, but we got 14. So it's more, and there are probably going to be more letters, or there will be more letters sent out. So how do we get to this point? Well, essentially, these letters are being sent out to countries where the trade negotiations have not really worked out or have not made enough progress. And these negotiations have been underway for quite a while with some of our biggest trade partners, including countries like Japan, South Korea, a number of other Asian countries that export goods to the United States as well. I'll go through the 14 countries in a few minutes, and we'll see the tariff rates that are being applied to these countries. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention about these tariffs or about these letters is the fact that these are essentially the White House's way of saying, look, the negotiations we've had have not made enough progress. These countries are normally used to stalling on these types of things. If you think about what goes on with international organizations and the WTO, for instance, not much goes on. It takes years to resolve the smallest trade issues through the WTO. Absolutely years. And when it comes to international organizations and the types of negotiations that go on between countries, years go by and not a lot happens. And I think Donald Trump is a very different president than presidents we've had in the past. He wants things to happen now. There's no reason why they can't happen now. It's just that the countries have these arrangements and they want to maintain the status quo, usually because it's to their advantage. And especially when it comes to trade with the United States, it's to their advantage. So some of our largest trade partners, such as Japan and Korea, they really did not want to give up what they had. So no progress was being made. So the Trump administration is going to just put tariffs on these countries. Now, the letters were very cordial, and the letters were generally the same. The only difference being the amount of tariffs stated depending on what the country is. The other thing is when it comes to transshipping, which is the practice of where a third party country ships through the designated country we're talking about to the United States as a way to evade tariffs. The transshipping rate really wasn't mentioned as far as the what the tariff rate would be. It was kind of left open in the letter. So, if you remember, Vietnam was we came to an arrangement with Vietnam last week, and it was a 20% tariff with 40% on transshipping. Now, with these new letters, it doesn't say what the rate would be for transshipping, but essentially the letters were cordial. And they said the trade relationship was valued, and we look forward to a trade relationship in the future. But due to the country's policies of generally tariffs and non tariff barriers, as well as other barriers, tariffs and non tariff barriers primarily, I can't remember what the third term was, but due to these reasons, the United States is just going to enact these tariffs on the country. And that's because these countries really aren't giving up. They're not giving up any ground in the negotiations. They don't want to give up what they've had. And they all have tariffs and non tariff barriers that are blocking U.S. exports from coming into their countries. They don't want to reciprocate. And that is why we have the reciprocal tariffs. Another thing all these letters mentioned is that we would be open to trade negotiations in the future, possibly open to trade negotiations in the future. And I think that is important because, as sweet a deal as a lot of these countries have had, going back years with the United States, in a lot of countries, it's politically untenable to really change the deal. I think that these countries and these leaders of foreign countries won't really have the political capital to negotiate with the United States until they see the impact of these tariffs on their economies, and their economies are actually suffering due to these tariffs. And I'm sorry it has to be that way, but I think it's the political reality in a lot of countries that they just can't politically make the negotiation. Pretty sure Japan is that way and Korea is that way. It's just untenable for the leaders there to cave in any way because they have such a sweet deal from the United States. Anything less, removing that deal is just not going to fly politically. And the only thing that's really going to move the ball for them, and of course it's to our advantage, is just putting the tariffs on them. And once the people in those countries see the results of that, the political space may be open for these countries to have more negotiating room with their own constituencies vis-a-vis the United States. Anyway, let's get to the chart that I have. I have a chart from, this was produced by CNBC, that gives us a nice, concise look at all the tariffs for the countries. So here we go. So these are the tariff rates, as you can see here. These are the April 2nd rates compared to the July 7th rates. And the July 7th rates are the rates that have gone out in the letters. So starting from the top, the highest one is Laos at 40%. Now that's a reduction from 48%, as you can see. Myanmar is 40%, which is also a reduction from 44% back in April 2nd. And just to go down the list here, if you want to look at it longer, just freeze the frame. But Cambodia, 36%, Thailand, 36%, Bangladesh, 35%, Serbia, 35%, Indonesia, 32%, Bosnia and Herzegovina, 30%, South Africa, 30%, Japan, 25%, Kazakhstan, 25%, Malaysia, 25%, South Korea, 25%, and Tunisia, 25%. Now, most of those are down from the previous rates enacted, although Japan is up slightly. Japan had a previous reciprocal tariff rate of 24%, and so did Malaysia of 24%. They've gone up. But most of the other countries are down from the original reciprocal tariff rate. And lastly, I just wanted to mention why so many countries are in this predicament. The So many countries around the world have these export industries that are geared towards exports, and their entire economy is geared towards exports in so much that they subsidize these industries, they create tax breaks for them, all the while neglecting other industries in the country that may be heavily regulated and highly inefficient and are essentially low productivity industries when it comes to their domestic industries. And this brings down the level of the standard of living for the entire country because they have so many inefficient industries, and they penalize these industries to subsidize their export industry. This is the mercantilist policy of having an efficient or productive export industry at the expense of everything else. And what you get is a very unbalanced economy overall. And you have these countries that are dependent on exports. If you notice, the United States is not dependent on exports. The way we raise our standard of living in the United States is by increasing our productivity in all industries. It doesn't matter whether it's farming, if it's retail, whatever. Now we see lots of changes in our country that we don't always care for. Maybe we have big retailers like Walmart that have put smaller retailers out of business. However, that is an increase in productivity overall. You don't like all the changes you necessarily see, although the United States is not dependent on exports the way other countries are, and that's because we have a fairly balanced economy. Even though there are some industries that are far more efficient than others, the productivity in the United States for domestic industries is much higher than it is in many other countries around the world, and therefore we don't have to subsidize our standard of living by using exports for that purpose. Anyway, I could go on this topic, and I will make more videos on this topic. But if you like this video, please give it a like. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. I could use more subscribers. So thanks for watching.